The white strip over my name is so fresh that one corner keeps lifting from the conference program. Reed presses it down with his thumbnail. "Your name was cut," he says. 40 minutes later, I'm sitting 3 tables from the stage while my cousin welcomes Dr. Amina Shah to the National Textile Care Conference. He gives her name the rich, measured weight he uses for lenders and people whose badges have gold ribbons. Dr. Shah adjusts the microphone. "Before I begin, I want to thank Claire Mercer of Clearfold Textile Services. My full name fills the ballroom. On the screen behind her is a photograph of my left hand holding our battered brass tally counter over a stack of red circled wash cards. Reed turns toward me. I expected anger, maybe embarrassment. What I see instead is fear, quick and naked before he smooths it away. That is the moment I understand he didn't cut my name to steal a presentation. He cut it because he needed me out of the building before someone started asking questions. I had found the program on a skirted table outside Ballroom C, arranged in tidy blue fans between bowls of peppermints. The cover showed a stack of white hotel towels lit like a religious object. I opened it to the Tuesday technical sessions while balancing my coffee on my suitcase. There it was at 2:15. Reducing rewash through residual alkalinity controls. Reed Mercer, Vice President of Strategy, Clearfold Textile Services. A strip of correction tape covered the line beneath his name. The conference staff had printed over it so cleanly that I might have missed it if the adhesive hadn't curled. I scratched the corner with my nail. Claire Mercer, Director of Process Reliability. My name was still underneath. "Don't do that," Reed said behind me. "It'll look worse." He had approached without the sound of his roller bag, which meant he had left it with someone. Reed never carried anything into a room if there was a person available to carry it for him. He wore a charcoal suit I had helped him pick for our uncle's memorial, though he had since had the shoulders altered. His badge hung perfectly straight. Vice President was printed below his name in type, large enough to survive a traffic stop. I held up the program. "What is this?" He looked past me toward the registration table. "Your name was cut." "You said that like you just found out." "I said it like I don't want you making a scene next to the coffee." The coffee was in silver urns 30 feet away. 2 men in golf shirts had already slowed down to examine a bowl of mints with unusual concentration. Who cut it? The program committee made a late adjustment. On Sunday? His eyes flicked back to mine. That was useful. The conference programs had been printed Sunday night because Reed had complained about a sponsor logo being too small and forced them to rerun the covers. He took the booklet from my hand, folded it closed, and offered it back. "Halcyon has 4 people here," he said. "We need 1 Clear Company voice this week." The Clear Company voice didn't do the study. I approved the study. You approved mileage to Peoria. And champagne and Racine and every hour of staff time you used, that work belongs to Clearfold. I know who it belongs to. I listed the operators, which is generous, but this isn't a journal, it's a trade conference. He had that maddening gift for putting a little truth inside a lie. Clearfold had paid for the work. Reed had protected my department twice when our chief financial officer wanted to fold it into quality assurance. And this was a trade conference, where half the session titles included the phrase game-changing, and presenters routinely called sales pitches case studies. But the work was mine in the way a repaired boiler belonged to the mechanic who had been burned fixing it. I knew every bad assumption we had removed to reach the answer. I opened the program again. They left the title. The title tested well. "You tested my research title?" It came up in the prep call. "With Halcyon?" His jaw tightened, almost pleasantly. "This is exactly why I wanted to talk before the session." "You didn't talk before the session." "I'm talking now." A woman at the registration desk lifted her hand at me. "Ms. Mercer, we have a badge issue whenever you have a second." Reed closed his eyes for half a beat. I smiled at him. "A badge issue." "Claire, you really should get to your prep call." I pulled my suitcase toward registration. The woman waiting for me was Nora Bell, the conference operations manager. We had exchanged 37 emails since January, most of them about whether my presentation contained enough learning objectives to qualify for continuing education credit. Nora had silver glasses, fast hands, and the expression of someone who had spent the morning explaining that a hotel ballroom could not be made 6 feet wider. "I'm sorry about this," she said. "Your presenter credential was deactivated last night." "By whom?" She glanced at Reed. He had stayed where he was, close enough to hear while pretending to answer an email. "The request came through your company contact." "My company contact is me." "For the technical session, yes. The sponsor account has Mr. Mercer as the primary." She rotated her monitor a few degrees. Most of the screen was blocked by a privacy filter, but I could see my name beside a red status bar. What reason did he give? "Presenter change." "Who's presenting?" Nora's lips compressed. Behind me, Reed said, "Len Dawes." I turned. Len stood near a ficus in a navy clear fold polo, holding my slide deck in a black portfolio. He was our regional manager for Wisconsin and Northern Illinois, a good laundry operator who could calculate pounds per operator hour in his head, and a terrible liar who blushed from the ears downward. "Morning," he said. "Len." He lifted the portfolio slightly, as if I might not have recognized my own red washcard graphic through the plastic cover. "When were you going to tell me?" "Reed said you two had talked." "Did he?" Len looked at Reed, then at a spot above my shoulder. "He said the content needed to land more at the executive level." The phrase had Reed's fingerprints all over it. "What did you change?" "Mostly the front end." "The baseline?" "Some of the baseline." "The residual alkalinity chart?" He scratched his cheek. "That's still in discussion." "That's the study." Reed stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Len is presenting an operational overview. You'll still be credited internally." Nora became intensely occupied with a badge printer. I looked at Len. "Did you read the validation packet?" "I read the deck." "That isn't what I asked." "Claire," Reed said, "do you know why the Racine numbers flatten in week 4? Len shifted the portfolio under his arm. "They changed titration kits." "No. They moved linen from line 2 to line 1 during a steam valve replacement. It's in the shift notes. If someone asks why the pH readings improved before we changed the sour injection, what are you going to say?" He looked miserable now, which did not make me feel better. "I'll review it before the session." "Review the packet, not the deck." Reed's voice sharpened. "That's enough." A badge printer whirred between us. Nora slid a new card into a plastic sleeve and set it on the counter. It said Claire Mercer. Below that, where presenter had been, there was a blank white space. "You can still access the exhibit hall," she said quietly. "Ballrooms are open seating." Reed picked up the badge before I could. "Thank you, Nora. We'll handle it." He steered me toward an empty section of hallway with one hand at my elbow. I led him until we passed the sponsor wall, then stopped so abruptly he took another step without me. "Don't touch me." His hand fell. For 1 second, we were back in the clear-fold conference room after my uncle died, when Reed had put both palms on the table and promised my mother he would keep the company intact. He had done it too. Our bank had been ready to tighten the line of credit. 2 hotel groups were 90 days late paying us. Natural gas prices had climbed, and one of our largest hospitals was threatening to take its linen in-house. Reed renegotiated the debt, raised rates without losing the hospital, and talked our mother's generation out of selling the Racine plant for warehouse space. He was good at his job. That was what made arguing with him feel like sawing through the floor beneath both of us. My phone buzzed. "Mom." "Reed says there's confusion with your session. Please don't let this become the story Halcyon hears." He must have texted her before he walked over to me. I put the phone face down on top of my suitcase. Reed's expression softened. He could be warm when he decided warmth was the efficient tool. "I know this hurts," he said. "You don't get to name what it does. Fine, it makes you furious. But we are 3 weeks from Halcyon's site review. They're deciding whether to keep all 4 plants open. They don't want competing narratives from a family management team. This isn't a competing narrative. They're already concerned about our reporting controls. The sentence came out too quickly. I watched him straighten his cuff. What reporting controls? General diligence noise. What noise? Claire, don't turn one phrase into an investigation. You just cut the person who built the data out of a presentation about data. I consolidated the presentation under the executive sponsor. You replaced me with Len. Len runs 2 of the plants in the study. He didn't run the study. He knows how to stay inside the scope of a question. There it was. A family walking past us laughed as one of the men lost control of a suitcase on the carpet. The ordinary sound made the hallway feel briefly tilted. What question are you worried I'll answer? I asked. Reed looked toward the elevators. I booked you on the 11:20 flight home. I stared at him. The car leaves in 15 minutes. You'll be back by early afternoon, and we can sort this out privately. My flight is Thursday. I changed it. You went into my reservation? Our office booked it. My clothes are upstairs. They'll send your luggage. My brass counter is in that suitcase. Reed blinked. Of everything I could have said, that reached him. The counter had lived in the top drawer of our late uncle's desk until I took over process reliability. Its brass casing was dented at one corner, and the little number wheels stuck in humid weather. At company dinners, Reed liked to tell people Uncle Ray had used it to count every pound of linen that left the first plant. He hadn't. He used it to count rejected pieces coming back around the sort belt because he distrusted production averages. I knew because I had found his penciled notes tucked into the torn velvet of the case. Monday, 114 rejects. Check rinse. Tuesday, 126. Still wrong. I had copied the habit. 1 click for every stained sheet, gray towel, or surgical gown that should not have returned to the wash line. Reed called it charming until the clicks started contradicting his monthly reports. I'll have someone ship it, he said. No. It's an old counter. It's mine. It belongs to the company. I laughed once. Of course it does. Don't be dramatic. You put me on a plane before my own presentation. I'm giving you room to cool down. And if I don't go? His face changed. The warmth shut off. Then you need to remember that your employment and your family's shares are separate matters. Halcyon's offer affects everyone, including your mother. He walked away before I could answer, probably because he understood he had finally said the quiet part too loudly. Nora was helping a man whose badge identified him as a consultant in tunnel finishing. When she was free, I returned to the desk. How much is an attendee pass? Her eyebrows rose. Your exhibit access is active. I want a pass Reed can't deactivate through the sponsor account. She studied me, then tapped her keyboard. The late rate is $850. That's obscene. It includes lunch. What are you serving? Chicken in a sauce the hotel will insist is marsala. I took out my personal credit card. Nora ran it, printed a receipt, and fed a fresh badge into the machine. You're aware this pass doesn't restore your session? She asked. I'm aware. Dr. Shaw's keynote starts in 28 minutes. That caught me. Why are you telling me? She asked this morning whether you had checked in. I looked up. Nora slid the new badge across the counter. This one said attendee in a clean blue block beneath my name. Ballroom C, she said, open seating. I clipped the new badge to my jacket and wheeled my suitcase into the restroom. A woman in an exhibitor polo watched me unzip it on the counter. Samples? She asked. Evidence. She nodded as though that was a normal conference category and went back to applying mascara. The brass counter was inside a velvet case beneath my laptop charger. I took it out and tested the lever. The wheels moved from 0476 to 0477 with a hard little click. My phone showed an email from Dr. Shaw sent 9 minutes earlier. Claire, Nora tells me there has been a presenter change. Are you on site? I typed, I'm here. My badge was changed, but I have an attendee pass. The reply came before I put my phone away. Good. That was all. I checked the suitcase at the hotel bell desk, put the counter in my purse, and entered Ballroom C through the side doors. The front tables had reserved signs for Halcyon, sponsors, and association leadership. Reed stood near the stage speaking to Celia Park, Halcyon's integration chief. I recognized her from a video call where she had asked him why Clearfold's rewash expense dropped sharply in 1/4, while total chemical consumption stayed flat. Reed had answered with 3 minutes about leadership alignment. I had answered with the sour injection changes and the fact that the expense report lagged operations by 5 weeks. Celia had written something down. She was compact, silver-haired, and dressed in a dark green suit that made every other conference outfit look accidental. Reed touched her elbow as they moved toward their table. Unlike me, she glanced at his hand until he removed it. I chose a seat beside the center aisle. If I sat in the back, Reed could tell himself I was hiding. If I sat in front, he would call it provocation. 3 tables from the stage felt like a position I could defend under oath. A server was setting down water glasses. Coffee? Yes, please. You look like you need the pot. I'm trying to maintain some mystery. He poured until the cup was nearly full. Len passed with the black portfolio under his arm. His ears reddened when he saw my badge. You stayed. I was promised chicken marsala. He stopped. Look, I don't like how this happened. How much of the deck did you change? We can talk after the keynote. You've got 4 hours before the session. Read the validation packet. I asked Reed for it. And? He said the deck was sufficient. I took out my phone. I can send you the approved version through the standards portal. His gaze went immediately to Reed. That was answer enough. Len, if you present numbers you can't source, it becomes your name attached to them. His mouth tightened. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you information Reed didn't. The ballroom lights dimmed twice. Len walked toward the Clearfold table without answering. Reed took the stage to introduce Dr. Shaw. He was good at introductions. He had read her biography closely enough to select the details that mattered. Her work with sterile textile standards, the National Infection Prevention Task Force, the field studies that had changed laundering guidance. He left out the part where her work had repeatedly embarrassed vendors selling expensive fixes for process failures. Then he welcomed her on behalf of Clearfold, the keynote sponsor. He looked directly at me when he said Clearfold. Dr. Shaw crossed the stage in a loose gray jacket, shook his hand, and waited while he returned to his table. She was taller than she appeared on video and wore red-framed glasses that matched the thin red line across the first slide. Good morning, she said. I'm going to talk about clean linen, which means I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes making you suspicious of clean linen. A few people laughed. She advanced to the photograph of my hand, the counter, and the red-circled cards. Before I begin, I want to thank Claire Mercer of Clearfold Textile Services. The room narrowed to her voice. This address changed shape after I reviewed Ms. Mercer's field study. Most improvement reports begin after an intervention, when everyone already knows what result they hope to show. Ms. Mercer began by counting what the system wanted to ignore. Reed turned. Fear crossed his face. Doctor, Shaw continued. She then tied every rejected piece back to a load card, a water measurement, and a shift condition. That sounds simple. Honest measurement often does. My pulse beat behind my eyes. The photograph had come from a standards group webinar in March. Marisol Vega had taken it at the Peoria plant while I was showing supervisors how we established the baseline. I had forgotten Dr. Shaw attended that session. Claire, are you in the room? I lifted my hand. Would you stand for a moment? The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I stood. Faces turned toward me, first curious, then toward Reed, because conference people can detect an internal company problem faster than a steam leak. Dr. Shaw smiled. Thank you for letting the rejects remain rejects instead of redefining them until the numbers looked better. That sentence landed somewhere under my ribs. Thank you, I managed. Celia Park looked from the slide to my attendee badge. Her eyes rested on the blue block beneath my name. I sat down. Dr. Shaw moved into her address without drama. That made the acknowledgement harder for Reed to dismiss. She wasn't rescuing me. She was citing a source. For the next half hour, she walked through the exact problem we had spent 18 months untangling. Linen could pass a visual inspection and still carry residual alkalinity, high enough to affect later processing. Plants treated rewashes as isolated quality failures. Finance treated them as chemical cost. Sales treated them as a reason to promise faster equipment. Each department owned a piece too small to reveal the pattern. On slide 14, she showed our 4-plant results with the customer identities removed. The graph in blue was the approved standards group graph, not the polished green version in Len's portfolio. Reed stopped taking notes. During questions, a chemical supplier asked whether the improvement came from switching sour products. "Same products, doctor," Shaw said. "The intervention was sequence control and verification. Claire, do you want to speak to the titration method?" Reed shifted in his chair. I kept my answer short. "We used the plant's existing kits, but we standardized when samples were taken. Before that, one shift sampled final rinse water, while another sampled extracted goods. The numbers looked comparable in a spreadsheet and weren't comparable on the floor. Did standardization slow production? At first, then rewash volume dropped enough to recover the time." The supplier nodded and wrote it down. Reed was waiting by the aisle before the lights came up. "Outside," he said. Dr. Shaw was still answering a question near the stage. Celia stood with 2 Halcyon colleagues, all 3 looking at my slide in the printed Keynote packet. "I'd like to say hello to Dr. Shaw. You can do that after we address what you sent her. I didn't send her anything outside the approved working group. You sent plant data. I submitted anonymized results through the association portal in March. You approved the release. I approved an abstract. And the validation appendix. It was attached to the same email." His voice stayed low. "Do not play document games with me." "I don't have to. Nora keeps records." His nostrils flared. Dr. Shaw approached before he could answer. Up close, her glasses were more orange than red. "Claire, I'm glad you stayed." "So am I." Reed stepped between us by half a shoulder. "Amina, terrific address. I wish we'd had a chance to align on how the company work would be credited." She looked at him over the frames. We did. A tiny silence opened. "My office sent updated presenter information," he said. "Yes, at 11:47 last night, it requested that future references use Clearfold's process advancement team rather than Claire's name." I looked at Reed. He smiled with his mouth. "That was about consistent branding." "I declined, Doctor," Shaw said. "Authorship isn't branding." Celia and her colleagues were near enough to hear. Reed knew it. His whole posture changed, not collapsing, but reorganizing. He turned slightly so the 4 of us became a professional circle instead of an argument. "Of course," he said, "and Claire deserves credit for coordinating the field collection. We're proud of the work." "Coordinating," I repeated. He ignored me. "We're actually presenting the broader executive application this afternoon. Len Dawes will cover how we scaled Claire's initial observations across the enterprise." Dr. Shaw's expression did not move. "I'll try to attend." "That would be wonderful." He touched my upper arm with 2 fingers, light enough to look affectionate from a distance. "Claire and I need to discuss a confidentiality concern." I stepped away from his hand. Celia spoke for the first time. "Is there a concern with the data in the Keynote?" Reed answered smoothly. "Just an internal question about the release process. The underlying findings are sound." "So the findings are Claire's," Celia said, "but the release may be unauthorized. The work is Clearfold's." "Doctor." Shaw closed her Keynote folder. "The association received written authorization from the sponsor account. I can have our administrator forward the record." Reed smiled again. "That won't be necessary." "I think it may be," Celia said. Her colleague murmured something about the next session, and they moved off together. Reed watched them go. When he turned back, the smile was gone. "You've made your point," he said to me. I haven't said 6 sentences. That's always been your trick. You arrange for other people to say them. Dr. Shaw glanced between us. Claire didn't know I was using the photograph until this morning. That's between Claire and Clearfold. No, I said. It's between you and me. His eyes chilled. Then we'll handle it at work. He left for the sponsor lounge, Doctor. Shaw waited until he was through the doors. How bad? I don't know yet. That usually means bad. I gave her a tired smile. Did my study really change your address? Yes. You didn't put that slide in because Nora told you about the badge? The slide deck was locked. Friday. The hurt shifted shape. Reed had not caused the acknowledgement. He had known it was coming. Did he see your slides? Sponsors received the preview deck Saturday. That explained the Sunday program rerun. It explained the changed flight, the badge, and his need to get me out before the keynote. Dr. Shaw studied me. Keep the email authorizing the submission. It's in my Clearfold account. Keep access to the association portal then. That account is yours. I will. And eat lunch. Workplace disasters are worse on conference coffee. She was pulled away by a group of hospital representatives before I could thank her properly. My phone had accumulated 11 messages. 3 were from people congratulating me. 1 was from Mercer. Saw Amina's slide in livestream. Reed knew about the photo. He asked me Friday who took it. Another came from my mother. Call me before you do anything else. I called from an alcove beside an ice machine on the conference floor. Mom answered immediately. Tell me what happened. Reed removed me from the program, canceled my presenter badge, changed my flight, and tried to send me home. He said the committee changed the session. The change came from his sponsor account. He said there are questions about whether you released confidential information. He approved it. She was quiet long enough for the ice machine to dump a load with a crash, then show him the approval. I tried. Claire, I'm asking you to lower the temperature. That doesn't mean I think he handled it well. He put correction tape over my name. And Amina Shah thanked you in front of the entire conference. You won that round. I didn't know we were having rounds. You and Reed have been having rounds for 10 years. The rest of us just keep pretending they're meetings. That almost made me laugh. Mom sighed. Halcyon can still change the deal. They can close Racine. They can reduce the family payout. I need you to think past how this feels today. I am thinking past today. That's why I'm not letting him rewrite the study. Your uncle trusted Reed to keep the company alive. He trusted me with the counter. The words sounded foolish as soon as I said them. Mom's voice softened. A brass clicker is not the same thing as 4 plants. To Reed, neither belongs to me. Come home tonight, we'll sit down together. He already rebooked me. Then maybe take the flight. I looked through the alcove opening. Len was crossing the lobby with my portfolio tucked under his arm. Reed walked beside him, speaking close to his ear. I have a session this afternoon, I said. You're not presenting. That doesn't mean I'm leaving. The afternoon session was full 10 minutes before it started. Dr. Shaw sat along the wall. Celia Park took a seat in the second row. Reed positioned himself beside the lectern, and Len stood at the laptop scrolling through slides, like a man looking for an emergency exit. The title slide still had my study title. Under it were Reed's and Len's names. Len began with a photograph of a Clearfold delivery truck at sunrise. He talked about operational excellence, family values, and the need to challenge legacy thinking. Then he showed a graph I had never seen. The rewash baseline was almost 30% lower than the figure in my approved study. I opened the conference app and found the session questions. They could be submitted anonymously and voted upward by attendees. I typed one sentence. Why does the baseline exclude rejected linen returned through manual finishing when those pieces are included in the post-intervention total? The question rose to the top within 2 minutes. Len saw it on the moderator's tablet. His ears turned red. Reed stepped to the microphone. That's a very technical distinction. The executive takeaway is that our integrated strategy produced a material reduction. Celia raised her hand. Is the distinction material to the percentage on the slide? Len looked at Reed. Then he looked at me. Yes, he said. It would change the percentage. Reed's face remained calm. We'll verify the final number and include it in the published materials. The room had gone still in the attentive, predatory way of an industry audience discovering that a case study might contain something more educational than advertised. Len closed the session 12 minutes early. My company email stopped working before I reached the hallway. A message arrived in my personal inbox from Human Resources. Effective immediately, I was being placed on paid administrative leave pending review of an unauthorized disclosure of confidential operational data. My conference bonus was suspended with it. At the bottom, beneath the standard instruction not to access company systems or contact employees about the review, was Reed's name. He had signed as executive sponsor. Across the lobby, he stood with Celia Park, explaining something with both hands. Then he saw me reading the message. He didn't smile. He simply tapped one finger against his own conference badge, exactly where mine had said, presenter that morning, and turned back to Halcyon. I folded the program open to the page with the white strip and took 3 photographs. Then I photographed both badges, the receipt for the attendee pass, and the administrative leave email. I forwarded the association messages already in my personal account to a new folder labeled Tuesday, because naming it lawsuit would have felt theatrical and naming it Reed would have given him too much space. The brass counter was warm from my hand. I clicked at once .0480, 1 click for the change program, 1 for the canceled badge, 1 for the flight, 1 for the suspension. It was an old habit from the plant floor. Count first, interpret later. Reed entered the elevator bank while I was still standing there. Celia wasn't with him anymore. Your access was supposed to remain active until 5, he said. Good afternoon to you, too. Did you attempt to download anything? My account stopped working while I was reading HR's email. That wasn't my question. I didn't download anything. The elevator opened. He held the door with his palm. Come upstairs. We can fix this before it hardens. I looked at the carpet between us. The conference hotel had chosen a pattern of blue and gold spirals that made every stain look intentional. Fix what? The leave? The bonus? The misunderstanding? You signed the leave notice. As executive sponsor, HR made the recommendation. HR investigated me between the top audience question and the hallway. His palm remained against the door. The elevator alarm began a patient electronic chiming. Get in, Claire. I bought my own pass. You don't get to tell me where to stand anymore. I walked toward the hotel bar. The doors closed on him. Dr. Shaw found me at a corner table with my laptop open and a club soda going flat beside it. She placed a printed email on the table. The March approval came from Reed's account. His signature block occupied more space than the authorization itself. Approved for association technical review and educational use, subject to removal of customer and employee identifiers. That's what I remembered, I said. Association administration pulled the full thread. At the bottom was my reply confirming that identifiers had been removed. Below that, Nora had acknowledged receipt of the abstract, validation appendix, photographs, and 4 plant result tables. I touched the edge of the paper. Can I keep this? It's your correspondence, too. My company account is locked. The association sent it to your personal conference address at my request. I told them there was an authorship dispute. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Reed called our executive director. I looked up. He says the photograph and plant-level trend lines exceeded his approval. He wants the materials withdrawn from the conference archive. The photograph shows my hand and blank wash cards. I know. The trend lines identify plants as A through D. I know that too. They've paused publication while they review. That hurt more than I expected. The keynote had happened, but Reed was already trying to turn it into something temporary. Dr. Shaw sat across from me. He's competent. Very. He moved from authorship to confidentiality in under an hour. He's had practice. At what? Finding the version of an argument that makes the person objecting look irresponsible. A server appeared. Dr. Shaw ordered tea. I said, "You don't have to stay involved. My name is on the keynote." "That's exactly why you don't have to." She leaned back. "Claire, if the source of a major claim is disputed, I verify it. That is my involvement." Her answer was so clean, I envied it. My phone vibrated against the table. "Len, I'm sorry." A second message appeared. I didn't know he changed the baseline until yesterday. He said manual finishing rejects were being double counted. I turned the screen face down. "I'm not supposed to contact employees," I said. "Then don't." "What if they contact me?" "Don't recruit them. Don't coach them. Keep what they send. You've done this before. I've worked in hospitals." Her tea arrived with 3 kinds of sweetener and a lemon wrapped in netting. She selected the sugar with the seriousness of a lab procedure. "Why did you use the counter photo?" I asked. "Because it explained the entire study in one image. It's old and inaccurate when the weather is bad. So are half the executives I know." I laughed into my club soda. When I returned to my room, there was a printed envelope under the door. Reed had sent a car itinerary for 6 the next morning. I canceled the car through the hotel and changed nothing about my flight. At 8, my mother called again. I let it ring once before answering. "Are you still there?" "Yes." "Reed says you refused to meet. He offered to fix a suspension he arranged if I went upstairs alone with him." That isn't how he described it. I'm sure he used better nouns. "Claire." I sat on the edge of the bed. Through the wall, someone was watching a game show loud enough that I could hear the audience react in bursts. "Mom, he changed the baseline. He said there was a difference in methodology. He excluded rejects from the before number and included them in the after number." I don't know what that means. It means he made the improvement look larger. Did he falsify something? The word sat between us, heavy and tempting. "I don't know who changed the chart," I said. "I know Len presented it and Reed defended it." "Then don't accuse him until you know." I didn't. "You're speaking like your uncle." That was not a compliment. Uncle Ray could turn a missing hand towel into a personal inquiry that lasted through dinner. Maybe he was right to count things. And wrong about plenty else. The game show audience cheered through the wall. Mom lowered her voice. "Halcyon's preliminary payout would let me stop depending on quarterly distributions. You know what the last 2 winters did to utility costs. If this deal changes..." "I know." "Do you?" "Yes." "I need you to say what you want. My name on my work. You have that now." Amina Shah said it from the stage. "I want the company's records to be true." She exhaled slowly. "That answer is harder." "I know." "Come home tomorrow. My original flight is Thursday. Why stay?" "Because the standards workshop is tomorrow and my attendee pass includes it." "You're on leave." "From Clearfold. I paid for the pass." "That sounds like a technicality." "It is. Reed loves those." She almost laughed. I heard it catch and disappear. "Call me when you land," she said. The next morning, I attended a session on automated sheet feeding and learned enough to understand why Reed wanted Halcyon to approve a $3 million equipment plan. The machines were impressive. They could reduce labor at the ironer and smooth throughput between wash and finishing. They could not correct bad rinse chemistry. At 10:14, HR emailed a meeting invitation to my personal address. Gwen Kessler appeared on screen from Clearfold's main office. She had been our HR director for 6 years and still kept a fake fern behind her because Reed once told her real plants looked unprofessional on video. Reed joined from the conference sponsor suite. Gwen began reading from a prepared statement. "This is a fact-finding conversation regarding potential disclosure of confidential operations information." "What specific information?" I asked. "We'll get to that." "I'd like it stated before I answer questions." Reed leaned toward his camera. "Plant performance data, proprietary process controls, and internal quality metrics. Which customer or employee identifiers were disclosed? That isn't the only confidentiality standard." "Which document are we discussing?" Gwen glanced down. The keynote presentation and the technical submission. They're different documents. We understand that, Reed said. Then which one triggered the leave? The combined pattern. That wasn't in the notice. Gwen raised one hand. Let's slow down. I placed the printed March approval beside my laptop. Reed authorized the abstract, appendix, photographs, and 4 plant tables for educational use. I complied with the condition to remove identifiers. His face stayed still. That authorization did not include line-level cost impacts. There were no cost impacts in my submission. They appeared in the keynote. They did not. Dr. Shaw had shown reject rates, residual alkalinity ranges, and process timing. She had not shown dollars. Reed said, "We're verifying that." Did anyone review her slides before suspending me? Gwen looked at him. He answered, "We acted to preserve the review." By accusing me first, by restricting systems access, which is normal. My access ended 3 hours early. That was an IT error. The pattern was becoming almost calming. Program committee, HR recommendation, IT error. Each decision arrived without a person attached. Gwen asked me to describe what I had sent the association. I read from the approval thread. When I finished, she asked whether I had discussed clear-fold methodology during the keynote. Dr. Shaw asked how we standardized samples. I answered. Did you have authorization to speak? I was the scheduled presenter until Reed removed me. The keynote was a separate event, Reed said. Then why were you trying to put me on a plane before it? Gwen took off her glasses. Reed looked directly into the camera. Because I knew you would respond emotionally to the presenter change, and I wanted to protect the halcyon process. There it was again. His preferred version of me, always one honest reaction away from proving him right. Is that all? I asked. We'll follow up, Gwen said. One more thing. Preserve the original session deck, all revisions, the sponsor account messages to the conference, and the source files for yesterday's baseline chart. Reed's mouth tightened. You are in no position to issue preservation demands. I'm asking HR not to destroy records relevant to its own review. Gwen wrote something down. We'll retain the materials. After the call, an email waited from Deborah Cho, the quality director for the hospital network that had validated the process at 2 clear-fold plants. Saw conference discussion. Our compliance group needs confirmation that the published methodology will remain consistent with the validation packet you provided us. Please advise who is handling this while you are unavailable. I did not answer. I forwarded it to Gwen with one sentence. Please route this operationally. I am following the instruction not to conduct company business during leave. 30 minutes later, Gwen acknowledged receipt. Reed did not. Marisol texted after lunch. He wants me to sign a timeline saying corporate leadership designed the control sequence and you administered field tests. I stared at the message. Another followed. That isn't what happened. I typed 3 different replies and deleted each one. Finally, I wrote, I'm under instruction not to discuss the review with employees. Please respond truthfully to any questions you receive and keep copies of anything you are asked to sign. I worried even that was too much. Marisol sent back a photograph of a typed statement with a signature line. Reed's name wasn't on it. Lenz was listed as the requesting manager. At the bottom, in smaller type, the statement said the manual finishing rejects had been excluded from the original baseline because they were not part of standard wash floor quality reporting. That sentence tied the authorship rewrite to the altered chart. I saved the image and forwarded it to Gwen without commentary. Her reply took 2 hours. Received. The conference ended for me in a windowless workshop where 12 plant managers argued productively about sample timing. Dr. Shaw joined by video. My name remained on the case study worksheet, though the association had placed a gray box beside it marked Attribution under Review. I paid for my own airport ride Thursday morning. Reed was waiting in my mother's dining room when I arrived that evening. A blue folder lay at my usual chair. Mom sat at the head of the table with both hands around a mug she wasn't drinking from. Reed had removed his jacket and rolled his sleeves, signaling family rather than executive authority. "We can end this tonight," he said. Inside the folder was a return-to-work agreement. My access and bonus would be restored. The confidentiality inquiry would close without a finding. I would acknowledge that the program change resulted from evolving conference requirements and that the study had been developed under executive direction as part of Clearfold's enterprise improvement strategy. "You wrote a confession for an event you're calling a misunderstanding. It's not a confession. It says your direction produced the methodology. I sponsored the work. You approved mileage." Mom closed her eyes. Reed tapped the agreement. "Halcyon sent a supplemental diligence request this afternoon. They want the raw rewash reconciliation, the authorization history, and interviews with the people responsible for the study. This gives us a unified account before that meeting. When is it?" "Monday. Racine. Who will be there?" "Halcyon Operations, Gwen, Len, you, and me." I slid the agreement back into the folder. Reed didn't reach for it. "If you refuse," he said, "the leave continues, the bonus is gone, and I'll recommend that Halcyon eliminate your role after integration." Mom looked at me. "Claire, the deal protects the plants." I thought of Marisol's unsigned statement, Len's message, Deborah Cho's validation packet, and the gray box beside my name. Then I thought of the change baseline, which Reed wanted everyone to treat as a difference in methodology. I closed the folder. "I'll be at Racine on Monday," I said. "I won't sign this." Reed sat back. For the first time since the conference, he looked almost relieved. "Good," he said. "Then bring your counter." The Racine plant smelled like hot cotton, damp concrete, and the faint vinegar bite of sour chemistry. I arrived at 6:40 Monday morning because Reed had scheduled the diligence meeting for 8 and because I knew he would arrive at 7. Marisol's photograph had been taken in Peoria, but the brass counter had begun its useful life here. I stood beside the manual finishing return bin and pressed the lever each time an attendant dropped in a rejected piece. Click. A gray bath towel with a darkened hem. Click. A sheet with a rust-colored streak. Click. A surgical gown carrying a faint yellow cast under the inspection lamp. The attendant watched me reach 0032. "You know they already count these," she said. "I know." "So why are you counting?" "To see if we get the same answer." She smiled. "We won't." At 7:12, Reed came through the production doors wearing safety glasses and carrying 2 coffees. He handed me one. "Peace offering?" "Celia drinks hers black. I ordered 3 before I remembered you were on leave." "Suspension affects email, not dairy." His smile arrived and left. He looked at the counter in my hand. "How many?" 32 in 20 minutes. "Compared to what?" "The dashboard says 11 for the shift. That's a reporting definition issue. It's a laundry cart full of sheets." He glanced toward the attendant, who suddenly found a towel fascinating. "This is why Halcyon needs the executive context," he said. "You see a discrepancy and assume the report is wrong. You see one and rename it." He took a drink of coffee. "You could still sign the agreement." "Did you bring it?" "It's in my bag." "Then you can recycle it while you're here." Celia Park arrived with Halcyon's head of plant operations and a financial analyst. Gwen came in behind them. Len was already in the upstairs training room, standing beside a screen that displayed Clearfold's logo and the words, "Process Transformation Review." The brass counter sat in the center of the conference table. Reed had asked for it, so I let him decide what it meant first. He began with Uncle Ray. He told the story well. A single aging wash line, hand-marked route sheets, an owner who counted rejected linen because every wasted load threatened payroll. Reed connected the counter to Clearfold's growth, then to his own decision to fund process reliability, then to the 4-plant study. "In that sense," he said, "Claire's fieldwork represents exactly what we hoped this initiative would become, a traditional family discipline elevated through enterprise leadership." Celia looked at me. "Is that accurate?" "Parts of it." Reed's jaw moved once. He funded my department, I said. He approved the study, travel, and staff time. He defended the work when finance wanted faster savings. The analyst stopped typing for a moment. Reed looked almost suspicious of being credited. What part is inaccurate? Celia asked. He didn't design the methodology. Len didn't design it. The plant supervisors and I built it after the first 6 weeks of data proved our normal reports couldn't be compared. Reed advanced to his chronology slide. It showed his authorization at the top, a neat sequence of project milestones, then the conference submission under the label Corporate Communications. My name appeared in smaller type beside field coordination. Celia said, "Let's separate authorship from authorization. Who developed the sampling sequence?" "I did," I said. Marisol Vega refined the load card handoff in Peoria. The Racine quality team corrected our inspection timing. Deborah Cho's hospital network validated the final sequence. And the reduction calculation. I built it. Finance reviewed the cost assumptions 5 weeks later. Reed leaned forward. Under my direction. You asked for fewer rewashes. That isn't a methodology. It establishes executive sponsorship. Yes, put your name on sponsorship. The financial analyst hid a smile by looking down at his notes. Celia moved to the next issue. Was the conference disclosure authorized? Gwen distributed the association email thread. Reed read his own approval without touching the paper. This authorizes educational use after removal of identifiers, Celia said. My concern is what happened beyond the submission, he said. The keynote included details Claire had no reason to expect would be published. Did it include identifiers? No. Costs? No. Plant locations? Coded trend lines can still reveal commercially sensitive performance. Halcyon's operations chief opened Dr. Shaw's slide packet. I've reviewed every line. What specific figure exceeds this authorization? Reed turned to Gwen. That's what the internal review was meant to establish. Gwen adjusted the stack in front of her. Our review has not identified one. He stared at her. She continued carefully. The association materials were submitted within the written authorization. Ms. Mercer's answer during the keynote concerned sampling timing already described in the approved abstract. We are closing the disclosure inquiry without a finding. My bonus was still suspended, my access was still blocked, but the accusation that had followed me out of the ballroom lost its official voice right there. Reed recovered before anyone else spoke. Then we can set that aside and focus on the business case. He brought up the graph Len had presented at the conference. 27% reduction in rewash volume. Clearfold's blue line dropped beautifully after the intervention. It was the kind of graph that made people approve equipment. Celia tapped the manual finishing category in the legend. Why was this excluded from the baseline? Reed answered, those rejects weren't consistently captured before the process change. Including incomplete data would create false precision. That's defensible, the analyst said. Reed gave me a small, restrained look. He had real competence, and this was the strongest version of his argument. Yes, I said, if they're excluded from both sides. I placed 2 worksheets on the table. The conference chart excludes manual finishing returns before the intervention. After the intervention, it includes them because our new load cards captured them consistently. That makes the before number smaller and the after number complete. The analyst pulled the sheets closer. What happens if you use consistent categories? The reduction is 11.8%. Reed said, which is still significant. It is, the study worked. He had expected me to attack the whole result. My agreement unsettled him more than denial would have. I continued. 11.8% supports the control sequence. It doesn't support claiming that a 27% reduction will help pay for $3 million in automated feeding equipment. The equipment case includes labor savings, he said, and energy, maintenance, and throughput. Rewash savings are still on page 14. The analyst turned to the financial model. At 27%. Reed looked at Len. Explain the chart revision. Len's face had the exhausted color of someone who had been awake all weekend. "The original deck used Claire's number," he said. "Reed said manual finishing rejects were double counted and sent me the revised baseline Sunday." "Were they double counted?" Celia asked. "I didn't verify it." "You presented the number?" "Yes." Reed's voice went flat. "You told me you understood the normalization. I told you I understood what you wanted changed." The room cooled by several degrees. Len opened his laptop and turned it toward Gwen. "The file history has both versions. My name is on the revision because I saved it." The chart itself came in an email from Reed. Reed didn't look at him. "And the statement sent to Marisol?" Len swallowed. "I sent it." "Why?" Celia asked. Reed wanted confirmation that the controls were developed at the corporate level. "I wanted an accurate project history," Reed said. Len finally looked at him. "You wrote the statement." Gwen placed Marisol's unsigned copy beside the revision history. The same sentence appeared in both. Manual finishing rejects were not part of standard wash floor quality reporting. Reed folded his hands. "So the issue is classification," he said. "We are discussing the treatment of one category inside a successful study, not fraud, misconduct, or some grand theft of authorship. The old version of me would have chased every word in that sentence. I would have argued until the room forgot what question came first. Instead, I picked up the counter. What does the dashboard say for rejects so far this shift?" The operations chief checked the live screen. 14. I turned the counter so he could see 0032. Those are physical pieces in the return bin downstairs. The shift supervisor can show you the cards. If 14 belongs in the company report, use 14 before and after. If 32 belongs, use 32 before and after. Reed's chart uses whichever number makes each side look better. Celia took the counter from me. Its brass finish looked dull against her green sleeve. "This was the baseline method?" she asked. "The first step, count the rejects, circle the load number in red, match it to rinse measurements and shift conditions." "Why the red circles?" "Black ink disappeared into the old card printing. Red survived bad photocopies. The operations chief looked at the validation packet Deborah Cho had provided through Clearfold's quality channel. The red circles were visible on every sample page. Then he looked at the shift logs Marisol had preserved. Racine's week 4 steam valve repair was there, along with the move from line 2 to line 1. The exact disruption that would have been mistaken for a chemical improvement if the load cards had not followed the linen. Each record led to another record. Nothing depended on my memory alone. Celia set the counter beside Reed's performance model. "We're going to take a break," she said. Reed caught me near the vending machines 20 minutes later. "You knew the deal would survive this," he said. "I hoped it would. You let them think I was hiding failed operations. You hid successful operations behind a better number. 11% doesn't get capital approved. Then the capital case isn't ready." His face tightened. "You always get to be pure because someone else has to keep the lights on." "That isn't fair." "It's true. Some of it was." He had sat across from lenders while I was on the wash floor clicking towels. He had made decisions I was glad not to make. "I know what you saved," I said. "It doesn't buy this." He looked toward the training room. "Mom will blame you when they cut the payout." "She can." That cost more to say than I let him see. Halcyon continued the acquisition, but the revised terms arrived at the end of the week. The Racine plant remained in the operating plan. So did Peoria, Champaign, and the 4th facility. The performance payout tied to Reed's savings projections was reduced, and Halcyon removed him as integration lead. He stayed vice president through the transaction, assigned to commercial strategy under tighter review. My leave ended with a 2-line email from Gwen. My bonus was restored. Celia offered me the operations role Reed had described as a courtesy title in his proposed agreement. I declined it twice. On the 3rd call, she asked what I would accept. "An independent process reliability office," I said. direct access to plant data, written authority to publish anonymized findings after customer review, and contributors named by work performed, not rank. That's a lot of governance for one disputed conference program. It's governance for the next program. She sent revised terms the next day. Mom signed the family approval. She didn't call me afterward. When I visited her, the blue folder was gone from the dining room table, but the pale rectangle where it had rested remained in the wood polish. "He kept the company alive," she said. "I know. You heard him. I know that, too." She looked at me for a long time. "I'm not ready to call this right." "I'm not asking you to. That was the boundary between us for a while, intact, useful, and cold. The association restored the Keynote to its archive with the original citation." Len corrected the conference paper before publication. Marisol Vega, the Racine quality team, Deborah Cho, and every operator who had recorded load cards appeared in the acknowledgments. My name returned to the program the following spring. The workshop was held in a ballroom with the same overcooled air and silver coffee urns. Before the room opened, I placed Uncle Ray's brass counter beside the microphone and set the corrected paper underneath it so the pages would lie flat. The display showed 0480. I pressed the lever once. The number turned to 0481 with a clean metal click. Then I opened the doors.